Finally, and probably most significantly, the Coptic Church has an extraordinary sense of mission. Having preserved the faith against oppression and persecution for so many centuries, it has much to offer the Christian world by its witness. His Holiness Pope Shenouda III and the Holy Synod find it perfectly understandable that Christians in the West should be looking to their Orthodox roots and wanting to return to the faith of their fathers. We British Orthodox have received nothing but support and encouragement in our ministry, and a very real and loving response from the Coptic Orthodox communities in Britain and in other English-speaking countries. The Pope has repeatedly warned the Copts of the diaspora that whilst preserving their faith and traditions, they must also become a vital part of their new countries, and translations of liturgical, theological and spiritual material into English is progressing actively. Dozens of Pope Shenouda's books are now available in English, and many can be downloaded online. Indeed, a search of the internet reveals a vast array of English language resources on our tradition, especially among the Coptic diaspora in the USA and Australia. In 1971, there were only 3 Coptic churches outside Egypt, the Sudan and the Jerusalem Metropolitanate. Since then, the establishment of our churches has followed the growth of the Coptic diaspora. In Australia, where the first priest arrived in 1968, there are now 3 bishops, 38 churches, and a theological college in Sydney ministering to some 30,000 Copts, with 2 monasteries and a Coptic village. There are 25 churches in Canada, more than 155 in the United States, with 4 bishops, 2 monasteries, and a theological seminary in New Jersey, and a further 3 churches in the Caribbean, as well as Coptic churches in Brazil, Bolivia, and Mexico. In Europe, there are churches in Austria, Belgium, Cyprus, Denmark, France, Germany, Greece, Holland, Hungary, Italy, Poland, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland. And here in England, we have 3 Egyptian Coptic bishops, 24 churches, a theological college, and a monastery. My colleague, Bishop Antonius Marcus, General Bishop for Africa, sees the Coptic dispersion as a great opportunity and asks, is the Coptic Church today in this generation a shepherding church only, or a proclaiming church? Or are both of these duties inseparable duties that the Church must carry together? If this is the true role of the Church, what then is the specific role of every Coptic Christian in fulfilling God's plan for the whole world? Sadly, too many reference books still only mention the Coptic Church in relation to the theological disputes surrounding the Council of Chalcedon in 451, and attribute to them, quite wrongfully, the Monophysite heresy. Since 1985, however, a very fruitful dialogue has been in progress between the Oriental and the Eastern Orthodox churches. A joint commission for theological dialogue between the 2 families of Orthodox has already reached remarkable agreement. In its first agreed statement of 1989, there was not only agreement on Christological matters, but on wider issues, and the statement was able to say, "We have inherited from our fathers in Christ the one apostolic faith and tradition, though as churches we've been separated from each other for centuries. Our mutual agreement is not limited to Christology, but encompasses the whole faith of the one undivided church of the early centuries." The following year, in the second agreed statement of 1990, there was further substantial agreement. "We have now clearly understood that both families have always loyally maintained the same authentic Orthodox Christological faith and the unbroken continuity of the apostolic tradition, though they have used Christological terms in different ways." This is probably the most exciting and promising ecumenical dialogue taking place at the moment, and the prospects for reunion between the 2 Orthodox families is very real indeed. It also says much for the fidelity of the 2 families to the apostolic faith, that after more than 15 centuries apart, with only occasional contacts and those sometimes hostile, they were each able to recognize the same faith in the other when they finally sat down together. At the present, the British Orthodox Church has congregations in Chatham, Bournemouth, Portsmouth, South East London, King's Lynn and Doncaster, with missions in Glastonbury, Sussex and Dumfries. Although the Coptic Church principally uses the liturgy of St Basil, the British Orthodox congregations are authorised to use the liturgy of St James of Jerusalem. It is interesting to note that the first Anglican use of the liturgy of St James was by Jeremy Taylor during the Commonwealth, when the prayer book was prescribed. Taylor's liturgy was taken up by Edward Stevens during the Restoration, and Stevens's work formed the basis for the non-juring liturgies in the 18th century, who even adopted the title, the Orthodox British Church. From here, the liturgy of the Scottish Episcopal Church was greatly influenced, so that its inclusion of an epiclesis and a great intercession after the consecration made it markedly different from the English Book of Common Prayer. In 1995, the Byzantine Patriarchate of Antioch established a deanery in the United Kingdom to receive former Anglican clergy and their congregations. At the time this was established, there was some expectation that they would use one of the two Western rites authorised for use in the self-ruled Antiochian Orthodox Christian Archdiocese of North America. But in the end, that wasn't adopted in the United Kingdom, but adopted the Byzantine rite instead. These two Western rites were based on the old Tridentine rite and the American Prayer Book of 1928, with the inclusion of an epiclesis and the Trisagion. The use of the Roman form of benediction is also permitted, but this form of sacramental devotion is so alien to Orthodox spirituality that it makes many Orthodox unhappy about the Western rites. The historical formation of the Book of Common Prayer, whereby all references to the sacrificial nature of the Eucharist, the real presence and devotion to the Mother of God and the saints, were excised in favour of ambiguity, receptionism and Protestantism, and that is another area of concern for Orthodox. It is of primary importance for converts to embrace the fullness of the Orthodox faith. There may be much of Roman Catholicism and traditional Anglicanism which is faithful to the tradition of the undivided Church, but neither has preserved the Orthodox faith in its integrity, and those coming to Orthodoxy still have much to learn. Only by immersing ourselves in the Orthodox tradition will we be properly equipped to express the faith in forms readily adapted to our own cultural milieu. In using the liturgy of St James, we are not so much conscious of it being an Eastern rite as an apostolic one. As Westerners by culture, we bring our own particular contribution to our liturgical worship. I have little doubt that a Middle Eastern Christian worships quite differently as expressing their own cultural tradition, just as Africans bring something specific to their worship. Our retention of our rich tradition of English hymnody, the manner of our communicating, the use of liturgical English to preserve the numinous in worship, the sense of godly order, the audibility of so much of the service, the active participation of the laity, the use of simple and hopefully melodious chants, are all specific ways in which we express those traditions to make the liturgy our own. I am concerned that the establishment of Western Rite communities within Orthodox jurisdictions has effectively created a form of second-class membership. Whatever the good intentions of those who authorise its use, it has to be admitted that Western Rite clergy are not fully integrated as Orthodox clergy, and are regarded with reservations, if not suspicion and outright hostility, by other Orthodox. They are also regarded with mistrust by clergy of Western churches who fail to comprehend their purpose. Although the British Orthodox Church is specifically commissioned to work among the indigenous population, we recognise that there are British-born clergy and laity among the various ethnic Orthodox jurisdictions, some of whom share the same aspirations. Our Britishness is not exclusive, and its use in our title does not imply that we alone have the right to minister to British people. When I celebrated our liturgy in Ripon Cathedral on New Year's Day 1995, I used the example of St Wilfrid, the founder of Ripon, as a salutary tale for all Orthodox here. In his day, the insular British and the Anglo-Saxon churches were bitter opponents. It was a squandering of talents, manpower and charity, and it retarded the progress of Christianity in some areas for generations. It was all the more scandalous because at that date both churches held to the Orthodox faith, although they didn't have communion with one another. An analogous position exists today with the two families of Orthodox churches within several jurisdictions, but there is no reason why we should not cooperate in many important areas and build up close fraternal ties in order to prepare the way for the reunion of the two Orthodox families when it eventually comes.